Hi, Dr. Scott Jensen here. Speech alone is not punishable. Let me reiterate the comments of University of Pennsylvania President Elizabeth Magill last week. Speech alone is not punishable. Let me give you the context. Let me give you the full sentence that she participated in when she used those words. I was focused on our university's long-standing policies aligned with the U.S. Constitution, which say that speech alone is not punishable. Many of you know my situation well enough that you can probably understand my astonishment when I read those words and listened to the hearing that University of Pennsylvania President Liz Magill participated in last week with Congress when she said speech alone is not punishable. Now, clearly, she's been walking it back and trying to make amends for unbelievably clumsy, insensitive, and wrong-headed comments. But she also, in her mea culpa confession to the world that has had some 40 million views, used other words. She mentioned something about these hate-filled times. I would say to her, Professor Magill, tell me about it. Tell me about how many months or years that you've been getting death threats on a regular basis. Tell me about the tears that you and your family members have shared as your life has been turned upside down simply because you expressed skepticism. That's what I've lived through. That's why I'm suing the Attorney General of Minnesota and suing the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice. No, I don't think it's enough that the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice has exonerated me and dismissed all the allegations against me in 6 different investigations. Because I think freedom of speech is worth fighting for, even if it means tears and threats. But Professor Magill, in her video walking back her comments from the congressional hearing, uses words or phrases like this. She considers a measuring stick regarding words to include elements of harassment or intimidating. Well, what about my words of skepticism and questioning? When I asked the question, how can something with a hole 50 times larger than the particle it's trying to block stop the particle, I was expressing skepticism based on physical principles and properties taught in every physics class across the land. When I expressed skepticism about the merit of throwing out principles of microbiology that had been ingrained in our scientific understanding of disease for centuries, how was that something that should have provoked death threats and hate mail? I would ask Professor Magill, where were your colleagues? Where were you in defending me a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when I wasn't spewing words of hate. I wasn't intimidating. I was expressing skepticism about the value of locking kids out of school, about what physical principles have to guide the policies we make as we respond to crises in our world. I would still ask that. She was focused on longstanding policies that had aligned with the United States Constitution. Do you think I wasn't? Is not the First Amendment and its protection of free speech a longstanding policy aligned with our U.S. Constitution? Speech alone is not punishable, she says. Now she's frantically walking that back, and she has resigned. She was president of the University of Pennsylvania. You might know a little bit about that school. It's an elite institution. It was founded by Benjamin Franklin 30 plus years before our nation was born. It's an Ivy League school, alongside of Harvard and many other fine educational institutions. When I did some research on it and asked the question at several levels on several platforms, is the University of Pennsylvania liberal? It usually deflected to a heading that asked something more like this: how liberal is the University of Pennsylvania? You can do your own research. Suffice it to say, over the last few days, I have been astonished at the irony that elite, left-leaning institutions such as the University of Pennsylvania would have its president come to my defense, as I have tried to explore the question: do I get free speech? Do I get a chance to express my concerns and my skepticism as a sitting senator, as a candidate for governor? And evidently, presidents of elite, left-leaning institutions of higher learning do believe that I'm entitled to free speech. It is a great irony for me that these spokespersons for these institutions would so concisely, dramatically, and forthrightly come to my defense. Dr. McGill, in her video where she extends regret for the choice of her words, says, we're going to get this right. I think so. I think we're going to get this right because people like me and people like you have supported me, and we've said, we will fight back. We will push back. Professor Elizabeth McGill would have been one of the last sources I would have expected to come to my defense, but she has. Some 40 million people have seen her mea culpa video. If you care about what I'm going through and what you might be going through, I hope you're willing to share this, because frankly, the fight I'm involved with is not simply about a family doctor in the trenches in some relatively rural area in western Carver County in Minnesota. The fight I'm involved with is the same fight you're involved with. freedom of speech, freedom to live our lives, pursue happiness, take care of our families, make independent decisions, and have a limited government that doesn't participate in some hell-bent adventure on some power grab. I guess I should say thank you to Professor Elizabeth Magill for so boldly proclaiming the words, speech alone is not punishable. It's also ironic that the words she used to try to defend her actions don't defend her words. Not by a long shot. Let's get this right.